Welcome everybody, you're watching We Heart Therapy, and I'm your host Anabelle Bugatti. Today we have a very exciting topic and a very special guest. Many of you may know that I'm a therapist out here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Some of you may also know that I'm married to an entertainer, and so I have a special focus in my practice by working with couples and individuals who are artists and performers for a living, and they have a very unique lifestyle, and of course Hollywood would leave us to believe that their marriages aren't successful. But we have one such guest today, Vera Goulet, who is the wife of the former Hollywood and Broadway icon and one of the greatest baritones of all time, the late Robert Goulet. They had a wonderful and successful, beautiful marriage, and she's going to talk to us today about the unique lifestyle of being married to an entertainer and how to make a successful marriage work. Thank you so much for being with us today, Vera.
My pleasure.
So we know being married to an entertainer, the lifestyle is very unique, and you find a lot of spouses marry into that, and they're not from the entertainment business, and they're always struggling for normal, but as you know, that normal for an artist or a performer is different from other types of normal. So can you talk a little bit about the uniqueness that lifestyle is?
Well, you know, I think what happens is so many entertainers, they put their career first, they forget about their relationship, they don't balance it well. Mm-hmm. And it takes, I think, two adults to be able to do that. And yes, you do hear about the unsuccessful marriages, but I know a lot of our friends who also had a successful marriage for many, many years, still have them. Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward was another example. Mm-hmm. So you never really hear a lot about them because it's always more exciting to hear about the ones that it's not. But I do agree, there are a lot of people who really don't know how to balance. And they get married, they get divorced very quickly, and I guess they go through several marriages or relationships.
Right.
For Robert and I, you know, he was a very mature man. He understood what it took, and I also understood what it took for an entertainer,
right,
to put his first love first, and that is the work that he did.
Right, so often we talk about how performers and entertainers really have two wives. One is their actual wife and the other is their career. And it really requires a lot of time, and I think a lot of spouses marry an entertainer and they get lured in by the glamour. What could be the glamour, and there's really so much more to that.
Yeah. And the glamour is certainly there. The only difference is that most people only think about the glamour, which is not constant. It's hard work.
Right.
It's hard work, and you have to, as a partner, you have to understand that. So you have to see the glamour side of it, but then you have your private moments. So the public side is one thing, the private side is another, and you have to balance it. I never competed with his fame or his career or his fans. I mean, that wasn't my goal in life. I loved him, and I cared about our relationship. We worked together. I mean, we're partners in business, but it was, you know, business one side, relationship on another. And so many of them also get lured into, they almost forget who they are when they become big stars, if you like, or famous. Some of them are not talented, but famous.
Right.
But everything is so tempting around them. They forget who they are, and they forget about really what their goal is in life. And they end up in relationships probably with the same person who is seeking the same fame.
Right.
And it doesn't last. It just doesn't last.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, the person, the entertainer, is really just a person. It's a man or a woman. You know, they're actors or entertainers. And what they do is a gift.
Right.
And that gift is given to the public. Once when they step off that stage, it's very private. You know, I'm sure you also know how many of them are very shy when they're not on stage.
Exactly. And I think, you know, another thing that I think people expect when they marry into the entertainment business, or they're married to an artist, is that when they're on stage, that's when they're working, but as soon as they leave the stage, it's all fun and we're going to parties and stuff, and they don't realize that there's a lot of unpaid hours, long, hard hours into the night when they're, stoking the creative fires, and, they don't come to bed at 9 o'clock, their schedule is very different.
Well, it's very demanding. I'll give you a couple of instances. When Robert was doing a Broadway show, he has, 8 shows a week. You can't party after.
Right.
You just can't party. You have to get up the next day and be fresh and get on that stage. And at one time we were in New York at the same time when Julie was in a show. And Robert said, we have to have lunch with her. We have to have lunch with her. So he called her and she said, Robert, I'm living like a nun. I do the show. I finish and I go home. She was doing Victoria, so she was playing a very, very demanding part.
You're talking about Julie Andrews.
Yes, and literally, she said, if I go out at night, I won't be able to do the show the next day. So people don't see that side of what I would call the dedicated entertainers, when they know what they are doing and what the stake is. They have to be fresh every day, so parties are not something that are in their vocabulary even. So basically, any person who marries an entertainer thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a glamorous life, and we're going to just be on the red carpet and have fun, and that's not what it's all about. In fact, most of them hate the red carpet. They hate the events. They have to do it because they're promoting something.
Right, and even here in Las Vegas, it's the city of entertainment, and I myself specialize in my practice in seeing entertainers and performers, and many of their spouses again feel like we have a regular routine. We go to bed at 10 o'clock, we watch TV together, and many artists don't even watch TV.
That's right.
And they may have to lock themselves in their study or their room, and hone their craft. Yes. And it takes a really strong person to understand that.
Yes. And that's the other key. It really takes two to make a relationship. I like my own space, he liked his own space. Robert was a loner, and so am I. So, there were times when I'd be walking through the house saying, where is he? And not in the house. I know he didn't drive, I didn't hear the cars. Then I go outside and there he is on a bench somewhere in the back by the waterfall, sitting there and just writing. And I glance and walk back. You don't interrupt him. That's what he needed, that space. He was creating something, he was working on something, and he needed to be alone. And a lot of partners don't understand that about their partner.
And I think too, as you said, it takes two, and for the person who is the artist and the entertainer, they don't understand that there is a person over there who also wants some of your time, and they may feel like I have to compete with the agents and the public and the shows and your tour schedule, and then your creative hours. When is it time for us? And so it takes, a really balanced and I guess focused and disciplined artist to also help their spouse feel important, because even though their career technically might be coming first, again, it's a psychological, emotional state of mind. When your spouse makes you feel like you're number one, then it's okay that they need to spend these hours, and it's easier to securely let them go have their space and take your own space, because you're not constantly, when's it us time, when's it us time?
Well, you're absolutely right, and that's why it takes really two adults. You can fall in love with somebody and the violins are playing and it's all wonderful, but then reality comes in at some point or another. That doesn't mean that the love goes away. Love just starts to grow in a different direction and become strong, because there are other challenges. And some of them are those that you're talking about. When is my time? When is his time? Now, if you start being demanding and oh my gosh, I need more, it doesn't work. He has to realize, and I have to realize what it takes to balance it. and the fact that I was very fortunate, maybe I'm one of the few, I don't know, but I hope there are more out there.
Right.
He also knew that my needs were there, and he never neglected to say you look lovely, or we always had a night out, which was our date night, even
every single week, right?
Every single week. And it was very special. I mean, he would, he'd book a table in a restaurant, and he'd have candles there, and maybe a little gift. It just, or a little poem that he wrote for me, and it showed me the appreciation that this man has for me.
It really said to you that you were important
Absolutely.
and a priority.
Absolutely.
And I know you've shared some of Robert's love letters, and it really showed his state of mind that even when he was busy honing his craft, he carried you with him
completely,
every step of the way. And that is, another bonus is, again, I may be working at my craft all day long, but I know that I'm important to you, and that at the end of the day, you still actually think of me first.
Yes, it's very, very true, and I think the sad part is that a lot of time people, they become selfish in many ways. They get maybe jealous of the fans or the agents. I remember, oh gosh, we were married for about a year, and we were walking to an event, and all these people just came crushing out of nowhere, and one lady just literally pushed me aside, like she wanted to get close to Robert, and I really didn't care for that, not because it was just rude.
Right.
And I remember Robert turned around and he said, "Excuse me, what are you doing to my wife?" And I said, "That's not very nice, And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I said, "Well, you can talk to him, but, don't push me aside." But he stepped in, and he was very nice to her. She actually was very nice. It was just the excitement. Now, anybody else, I guess, maybe the husband wouldn't have done that. Or maybe me, being another person, would have gotten very angry and said some terrible things, but I understood what was happening. I didn't care for it, but I understood what was happening, and that was his job. Without those fans, I mean, he doesn't sell tickets, people don't see the television shows, people don't see the movies, and that's the balance that you have to understand. You have to understand what his responsibilities are.
And the fans are important, and they're a beautiful part of the career, but then you have another side of the fans, the admirers,
the crazy ones
who act downright inappropriate and send, flowers, letters, nowadays pictures with social media to emails, and it takes a really thick-skinned wife or spouse, because maybe you're married to a female entertainer, but it takes a really disciplined artist to say no and not fall into people throwing themselves at you, but then for the other spouse to feel secure in the marriage and not stress out every time an admirer chases them down.
Well, we didn't have, when Robert and I were first together before we were married, social media was not like it is today.
Thank goodness.
In many ways, yes, but there was a thing called US mail. So some of the letters that used to come in, and phone calls. There were ladies who literally were saying, "Are you sure you want to marry her?" I mean, it was like people out of the woodwork who really thought they had a claim on him. And I guess I remember looking at a couple of them and said, "Do you know this person?" He goes, "No." And I'm going, "Well, that's what they think. They think they're so close to me." And it took me a while to kind of understand that part of it. How can a total stranger, if you like, who maybe brushed with your shoulders in a situation, or backstage or whatever, think that they are entitled to this person? And there were some crazies. We dealt with them, but it never bothered me. It never bothered me, because I was very secure as to who I was, and also what I wanted in life. And what I saw in him was a solid person. And it never really bothered me. It really never bothered me. In fact, you know, different situations. I mean, women were always around,
right?
Always, and some very beautiful women. And I used to enjoy watching it because I just thought, well, you know. They like him.
Right.
My gosh, if I like him, I'm glad they like him, you know?
But though Robert never made you feel as if he was ever tempted by any of
no,
those, which
and he
is
was a big,
important
you know, he was a big flirt. I mean, if he saw you, I'm sorry that you never met him. You know, we've known each other for a while now, but after he left, but I mean, you would have never felt unnoticed by him. He would always come and he would tell you how lovely you were. He was a flirt, but it was a very innocent flirtation. He liked to make people feel good, and he loved people friendly. In general. And he flirted with them, and they loved it. I mean, they just loved it. I still get letters from so many of them, you know, who say, you know, he was just such a wonderful man, and you know, and they recall situations. But it never bothered me. I thought it was. Excellent at doing that extra part of his job, because that wasn't on stage. That was after the show, or situations at an event when people would come up to him. He extended himself, and he shared his life with the public, his public life with the public. And I just thought it was a wonderful way that he handled it, and he understood what it took, and I admired him for it, you know?
And I like how you said, you know, Robert was a really solid person, and some of the other struggles that we see entertainers and performers encounter more in the entertainment business than in other fields, you know, the drugs, the alcohol. After all, you know, having drinks or people buying you drinks, it's social currency. You take a meeting with an agent, they want to give you more drinks, you know, and it takes you know, many entertainers feel like they can't say no, that I can't take this meeting and have a Coke instead of a whiskey, you know.
Well, it's true, and it's knowing when to say no. And also a lot of entertainers are surrounded by people. I used to call them the hangers-on. I got rid of a bunch of them when we first were together. And they will never say no to a person, no matter what that person is doing, because they like where they are. If they said no, maybe he'll get rid of them, or she'll get rid of them. And those entertainers or actors, no matter who they are, male or female, they get trapped into that situation. And you've seen some dreadful disasters of loss of life, because of not being able to use your judgment,
draw boundaries,
and say no.
And it's okay to say no.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think many entertainers and artists feel like they won't be respected if they say no, but I find even with...
It's the opposite.
Yeah, with my own husband, you know, when he's out in the field and he says no, people actually respect him more.
It's the opposite. And I know, let's say Robert was touring with a Broadway show, and we are out there for a year and a half. I mean, you go from one hotel room to another hotel room, and after a while the cities they just merge together, you know, because you get to the airport to the hotel, then there are rehearsals, then you know the shows, and you're from the hotel to the theater, and eventually you go from the hotel back to the airport, next city. And people would come up, you know, the people were marvelous. I mean, I have to say his audiences were incredible. But a lot of them also wanted to socialize, and they would come backstage after the show, and they would say, well, we come back, we're having a gathering at this club or whatever. And Robert said, I can't. I said, well, come on. He said, yeah, I can't. I have a show tomorrow. And there's a thing where you say no.
Right.
If you say yes, you'll be out every night of that week. And you have 8 shows, too much in days. You can't handle that. And it's not it's not the life that, I mean, that's not what he's there for.
It's not a healthy life.
Exactly.
And that's, you see a lot of artists, like you mentioned, you know, a lot of suicides, accidental overdoses. And you also find, because their life is, you know, right out front for everyone to see, that there's an enormous pressure to maintain a certain image. And so this, maintaining this image, because that's what they're selling, sort of consumes their life. And so depression gets high, narcissism gets high.
You know, also, I think, it's always been there, but it's even more magnified today because of social media. People are starting to think in terms of success, that you have to be seen everywhere.
Right.
You have to be at the right place with other people. And that's not what life is all about.
Right.
You know, you will find that any serious artist, be it a painter, be it a sculptor, be it a writer, be it an actor, an entertainer, that, you know, that there's a public side of it. But what they're creative, that's very private.
Behind the scenes.
It's behind the scenes. They don't have to be out clubbing every night and being, you know, on Facebook or wherever, or headline of some magazine that nobody cares about. And this is, fame has become very fickle. It's everybody thinks fame is, oh my God, I want to be famous. Famous for what?
Right.
You know,
what is
what
it
do
that
you
you
offer?
do?
Yes, exactly. And they want to be seen. They want their pictures to be seen, and that's not what it's all about.
They're 15 seconds of fame, but yet they don't realize that's about how long it lasts.
Exactly.
It's 15 seconds.
Yeah, well, it's Andy Warhol said 15 minutes of fame. That's it, you know. You know, Robert would attend things when they were important. I mean, he knew his responsibilities when he had to promote things. He did interviews. He was the hardest worker ever. He would attend events that were important to him, and certain events in our business that you really have to be a part of, let's say Tony Awards, etc. But when all the other we used to get invitations. My God, I mean, you know, you go, where do I go first? And he would say, no. Why? I'm going to see the same people. I'm not contributing anything other than my face, and it's really not helping anyone. Why? And today you find that fame is taken that you have to be there.
Right.
And that's not what it's all about. And I think a serious artist truly understands that, and also they understand that they have another life. They have another life. You know, he may be in New York and I may be here, and they're asking him to attend something, and he's saying no because I'm flying in the morning to go home. Right. And I don't need that. So it's balancing it. It really is. It's a very delicate balance.
And then there's the other side of the business, which is the business side of the business. And you know, many spouses do get involved in helping to run the business, which I think helps, but it can create its own set of problems. And you also find, you know, that there's a lot of dishonesty that you encounter with the people that you do business with, and it becomes hard to know who to trust. So your unit has to be really thick,
solid.
You know.
And you know, I didn't want the job. I really did not want the job, but he was left in. He was just literally left alone by people who handled his money, from lawyers to accountants to managers, and it was a bad situation. And it was just my instinct saying, "What? This is all wrong." You know, what's happening here? And I took on the role, and he always said, you know, you took on the role that you really didn't want, and you did it magnificently. And when I think back on it, I used to say to him, you know, if we can find somebody that you can trust, I'll gladly resign. I mean, it's not what I really wanted to do. I loved the creative part of our business, and I hated the business side of our business because of the things that you mentioned, of the insincerity of people around you.
Everyone offering you a promise that I'm going to get you this, I'm going to get you that.
Or reneging on their promise when you're literally ready to sign a contract.
Yes.
And saying, well, yes, but we have to change this or that. And it was when I took on the role, I said, okay, I mean, it was just something I did it because I cared.
Right.
And then you realize the challenges of being a partner in a business with your husband. With your partner in life.
Right. How do you separate, our marriage from our business relationship at dinner time?
Exactly. And there were times at the very beginning it was hard because I didn't know when to stop and I didn't know when to end. And he also, so did you talk to so and so today? And I said, yeah. And then the whole conversation would be about this project. And eventually I said, wait a minute, we talk about it during the business hours.
Right.
And if we are having dinner and it comes up, we cut it, we condense it.
And we'll talk about this tomorrow during the business hours.
This is what's happening, and I bring them up to date in like 2 sentences.
Right.
We'll discuss it tomorrow.
Right.
And then we went back to talking about art or poetry or politics or history.
Right. So there has to be some boundaries around
otherwise it doesn't work, and it can affect two people if they don't know how to handle it.
Right. Right. Now you and Robert were married for 27 years. You guys had a fantastic and beautiful marriage up until his passing in 2007, right?
Yes.
And so how did you guys make it work when so many others fail? What is the secret?
It's understanding. It's understanding the person that you want to. Well, I'll take that back. You make a commitment. I didn't want to get married. That's not what I was looking for when I met Robert. Although I met him in 1967, so I knew him for many, many years. I wasn't looking for a marriage, but I always knew that I would end up with him. I don't know, it was just a feeling. And when it finally happened and I committed to it, it was a commitment. To me, a commitment means you honor it, and you don't just. It's not a 10 seconds. It's not a 15 minutes of fame.
Right. You make it important and a priority.
Absolutely, and he also had just gone through a terrible, terrible divorce situation. So, at that time of his life, committing to something like a marriage, long-term marriage. Was something he had to think about, as I did. And once when that commitment was there, then you learn your ups and downs, and you have your little arguments and your little fights and differences. But that's what made us all so exciting, having the differences. And there were times when he would storm off and say, "No, I don't agree with that." I said, "Fine." If it was to do with an offer that he got, and I would say, well, I think you're wrong, but whatever you want to do. Day later, he'd come back. I've been thinking about it. So it was never putting pressure on him of what should be done, how it should be done in business or in our life. Picking out furniture. Do you like this? No. Okay, do you like this? So we always found a mutual ground, and that's what it took. It was compromise,
not competition. Which so many couples have, especially in the entertainment business. So.
And that's their biggest problem. It's and sometimes I think it's even harder when it's competition when both partners are in the same business and they're both actors or entertainers, then it's really bad. It can be bad, in fact, I just heard a little while ago of two of our friends that Robert and I were so happy, and they're just separating, and it made me very sad because I really thought they were solid and very famous people, and I said, oh, it made me sad because in fact we saw the man in New York before the last play we saw in New York was with Robert, with this person, and she was pregnant, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm so," and it made me so sad because I said, "My God, you know, what happened? What happened?" So it's always more challenging. But regardless of that, when you have one person who is in the entertainment business, and if you are or if you're not, the challenges are constant, and you have to say to yourself, is it the business or is it our life? What is our life all about? And the life is really ultimately, you know, I wish I could look at the front door and see Robert walking through. Because with all the shows, with everything that he did, and all the excitement and the glamour of it, and the hard, constant work, you know what I miss the most is him. And this is what you have to realize. You know, you make a commitment, and what is it all about? Are you committing to his career? Are you committing to the man? And vice versa. You know, I mean, I am capable of doing a lot of things. I've done a lot of things in my life, and successfully. And he knew that, but he didn't marry what I did. He married me. And
at the end of the day, he always made you first. He made you a priority, even though maybe his schedule came first. It was always an emotional state of mind.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And you know, I wish more people understood all of that. You know, marriage, a partnership of any kind, in business or otherwise, but certainly when it comes to a close relationship, a partnership of any kind, when you are living with that person, it takes a lot of work. You know, I never thought, when my mother was sick, we moved her into our house. I never thought that, I knew Robert was capable, but I never thought to that extent. He would give her pills in the morning. He would make her an English muffin with and bring her juice in. He took such great care of her. And I said to myself, this is not his mother. This is my mother. And she never wanted to live in our house, and I never wanted my mother to live in our house. But he said, no problem, because she was bedridden. And I'll never forget it, every evening he would get the ice cream and he would take it to her bedroom and he would spoon feed her. And I watched this and I said, my God. And in my head I'm saying, this is Robert Goulet. He's an entertainer. What is he doing? And that was the man that I married, the man that cared about my mother and about other people.
And he made an investment into you and your life together.
Anybody else would have said, you know what, you're moving your mother in our house. Well, you know, she's sick. No, well, you know, how is that going to work? I mean, and it's a big house, Robert. But never did that. It was, I never had to even ask.
And you really, if you're getting into a marriage and it's all about me or I, you know, sort of a selfish mindset, then it's doomed from the start.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that's what you have to recognize. And I think, you know, a lot of us make wrong choices. And, you know, people say, if you went back, I really don't think I made wrong choices in my life ever. You know, I kind of knew exactly. And that's what I think people lack when they get carried away with certain things.
The fleeting parts of experiences.
I won't mention names, but a friend of ours married a lady, and she's not in the business, but she saw this glamour, It was going to parties and flying in private jets, etc. And it didn't work out that way. For many, many reasons, and some of the dialogue that came out of her was so disappointing because she truly did not understand the man or the business. It was not party every night. It was a person who was working very, very hard and was very dedicated to his work. And she took him for his fame and not for the man that he
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
or the artist, or the creative side of it. And that's the mistake that people make.
Right. And it
So-
sounds like a large part of what made you guys so successful as a couple is, you know, that Robert was fully invested in the marriage, and emotionally he made you feel like you were first, even if technically work came first. You always felt important, you knew you were important, and you had that security that Robert loved you first and foremost. And so that made the whole relationship secure enough to do your own things, you know, to enjoy life together, to face the challenges of the business together and not feel like everything's a threat to the security of the relationship. And he was disciplined and drew appropriate boundaries, knowing what it takes to be a married man and an entertainer. The two don't have to be, you know, a monogamous, happily married person and an entertainer, an artist, you
Yes.
know. But as a spouse as well, you know, being able to understand and support that, you know, the stage presence or the performance presence is just one aspect, but there's so much hard work that comes behind the scenes that we really have to be supportive of.
Of course.
And, you know, understanding that is their work, that is what that performance is based on, and without that creative hours burning the midnight oil, there would be none of that. So
You know, but that goes really for all marriages, in our
Yes.
business and out of business.
of course.
And I think what another problem that exists today is that people don't talk to each other. Families, they're all on their little gadgets.
Yes.
Children, husband. You know, Robert and I, whenever we were home and we didn't go out to dinner, I would cook. We'd sit in our kitchen, which was our favorite dining spot. I would light the candles. Television was off. Phones were not answered unless it was an emergency. And we'd have a candlelight dinner. I see today in our business and people who are not in our business,
Right.
they're all rushing. They're all looking at their little gadgets.
Taking
they're not
pictures of their food.
Thank you. They're not talking to their children. They're not talking to each other. And to me, that is a total disconnect. It's a total disconnect. And they don't realize by that disconnect the damage that they're doing
Yes.
to their relationship with their children, with their spouses. And that goes for anybody in our
Right.
business or not. You know, put it away. Talk to each
Right.
other.
Right.
There's nothing like a conversation. Even whatever. Talk about anything. It's communicating. It's touching each other's soul. You know, that's what it's all about.
Right. Right.
So that's the sad part of what I see around a lot of people who don't succeed with their marriages.
Yeah, and as you so eloquently pointed out, that's not just the entertainment business,
It's
but it's
everywhere.
all marriages,
Everywhere.
you know, which I see in my practice all the time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about how special and unique your marriage with Robert was, and how you guys were able to make it so successful in a world where so many don't appear to be so lucky. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you again to our viewers for tuning in. Make sure that you stay tuned and hit subscribe.